Interesting to hear those views. Joining us now is Derek Burden, who's co-founder of the Cougar Automation, a company that has transparency over its salaries morning, and Luke Hildyard from an independent think tank which advises on issues of pay. Interesting listening to some of that. They talked about sort of embarrassment, didn't they? People very reluctant to share how much they earn. But you do something completely different in your company. Everybody knows, don't they, who gets paid what?
About 5 years ago, we decided to publish all of the salaries, so there's no secret about it. There's no individual bonuses, no funny business. Everybody can see everybody's salary with a couple of clicks.
Does it make a difference?
I don't know if it makes a difference. We haven't found it makes a problem. What it does do, at a stroke, it does away with all that rumour, gossip and speculation.
I think the person at the end of those voices we heard a moment ago, people talking about what they thought about, was saying they thought it was a British thing. Are we different from the way people handle it elsewhere in the world? Or is it something to do with our awkwardness around this?
I think definitely the example that we've been discussing is the lady at Google who asked all her American colleagues to share their pay details, and I think perhaps Americans are a little bit more comfortable with around money and discussing how much they're worth compared to us. I do think we can be a bit reluctant to talk about it, paradoxically, because we're so obsessed with it. It's seen as kind of a proxy for your worth as a human. To say you're paid more or less than somebody is tantamount to saying you amount to more or less than them as a person, which is quite a difficult thing to put out there and face up to.
Do you think it would make a difference to sort of equality? Because the government is working on this, particularly in pay differences between the genders. Do you think it would make a difference if pay was published? If we routinely did that actually it might be more equal?
Well, of course, in days of yore, far more people would have been covered by a collective bargaining agreement negotiated with a trade union across the entire workforce rather than just individually. And in those days, when pay structures were more open and more collective, there weren't such huge gaps between the CEOs and managers at the top and the ordinary workers at the bottom. So I definitely do think greater transparency and more collective bargaining would reduce those gaps, yes.
Derek, I mean, has it ever occurred when someone has not been happy to play ball, to have their salary out there? Because it's not just... I mean, it is literally only the people who work for you who can find that out, is it? It's not available... You know,
no,
someone can't log into the company...
Available. No, of course not.
Okay.
But we employ about 100 people, so I guess it could be quite leaky. People might discuss it elsewhere. But no, we're very comfortable with it. I suppose, what's the fear? That it might show up some big discrepancy, that two people doing very similar work with a similar contribution and similar results are paid wildly different amounts.
Has that happened?
Well, I guess no, I can't say it has, but if it did, then potentially there is something to sort out there, isn't there? And let's have a grown-up discussion about that. And the pressure to sort it out will come about, and that's the right thing. I've been trying to think who would fear this. Presumably people that think they're paid more than they're worth. So perhaps they should think about that. I think most people probably think they're paid a little bit less than they're worth, and at least this will give them the proof and the evidence.
Exactly. If you're happy with your pay policy and you think it's the right thing to do, you should be happy enough to be transparent about it and justify it to your employees. Because
there are different ways. I mean, you have a grading system, don't you? But there are different ways that people get paid more. I mean, you know, some people are possibly just better at asking for it, negotiating for it than other people.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's where the point about collective bargaining comes in as a sort of slightly fairer system where you agree that people at a certain level are paid or a certain degree of seniority are paid this much, people who are at this level or have this much experience are paid a bit more or less. That seems to be perhaps a fairer way of doing it than whoever's best at pushing themselves forward the most aggressively.
Derek, I won't ask your age, but do you think there are generational issues? Do you think there's a generation possibly beyond yours, but prior to yours, who never spoke about money and it was deemed to be distasteful?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a household, to this day, I had no idea what my father earned. But we're all a product of our upbringing. It is an awkward subject, I admit that, and whilst I can discuss this internally at Cougar, all my colleagues know they have a legitimate right to know, because I want them to be connected and engaged with the business. I myself would feel a bit awkward discussing it on television, for example.
I mean, interesting, some people even make the point, Tina says, and you know, there will be other companies like this. In the past, I worked for a place where discussing salary was a sackable offence. Pay was a basic plus commission, and people had a wide variety of levels. It didn't make for a happy place. I mean, some people, you know, there are many companies that ban people from having discussions.
I think that's nonsense. In fact, as the lady from Google said yesterday, the world didn't fall in. Nothing but went down in flames, and some people were improved. Some people's lives were improved a little bit. And that's been our experience.
Telling people they can't discuss what they're paid with other people is hardly going to make them think, oh, well, I must be getting a fair deal then. It can only encourage sort of rumour and innuendo and sort of general dissatisfaction.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.